Four ships were gone: the tanker Nasuzen Maru and the freighters Tamahoko Maru, Tainan Maru, and Kenichi Maru. It was the single most effective torpedo attack of the entire war. That was the report from the USS Tang under Lieutenant Commander Richard O. Kane on the night of June 26, 1944, as he pressed the attack into the Yellow Sea. That night, O'Kane added four more ships to a tally that would reach 27 confirmed sinkings, making him the most successful submarine commander in American history. But O'Kane's journey to that moment began years earlier on a December morning that changed the world. December 7, 1941. The Japanese strike force comes in low over Pearl Harbor. Aboard the old destroyer Pruitt, a 27-year-old lieutenant named Richard O'Kane watches the smoke rising from Battleship Row. He sees the flames, the sinking hulls, the dead floating in the harbor. In that moment, he makes a decision that will define the rest of his life. He volunteers for submarines. The Navy sends him to submarine school in New London, then to his first boat, the obsolete USS Argonaut. Argonaut is a relic designed to lay mines, too slow and too old for frontline combat. O'Kane serves as her executive officer, learning the basics of underwater command on a ship that belongs in a museum. But the war will not wait for modern equipment. The Japanese are sweeping across the Pacific, and America needs submariners who can fight. O'Kane gets his chance when he reports aboard the fleet submarine USS Wahoo as executive officer. The captain is a lean, intense lieutenant commander named Dudley Morton. Morton carries a reputation for aggression, a quality rare in the cautious early days of the submarine war. On their first patrol together, Morton tells his officers something they have never heard before. He says, "We are going to attack everything we see, no more hiding." In January 1943, Wahoo slips into the shipping lanes off Wewak, New Guinea. Morton spots a Japanese convoy and makes his move. This will be no submerged stalk with periscopes. Morton brings Wahoo to the surface at night and drives her straight into the middle of the enemy formation at full speed. O'Kane stands on the bridge beside him, watching the plan unfold. The Japanese escorts are caught flat-footed. Morton fires torpedoes at point-blank range, then orders hard turns to avoid collisions with the burning merchant ships. O'Kane handles the tracking party below, feeding firing solutions to the conning tower. The attack sinks multiple ships and sends the convoy into chaos. It is a new kind of submarine warfare, aggressive, ruthless, and fought on the surface. Morton and O'Kane refine this technique on every subsequent patrol. They develop what will become known as the Morton-O'Kane system. The executive officer mans the periscope and the target-bearing transmitter, while the captain commands the approach from the bridge. It allows for faster, more accurate attacks with fewer men. Wahoo becomes the most feared submarine in the Pacific, and O'Kane absorbs every lesson Morton teaches him. Enjoying the story? Subscribe to join us for the next one. In March 1943, Wahoo returns from her fourth war patrol. The boat has been gone for weeks, and the men at Pearl Harbor have received no word of her fate. When she finally appears on the horizon, a lookout spots something tied to her periscope. It is a common house broom lashed upright to the steel. The message is unmistakable, a clean sweep. Wahoo has sunk 9 Japanese ships on a single patrol, the highest total ever recorded by an American submarine. The crew is exhausted but exhilarated. Morton and O'Kane are greeted as heroes. The broom becomes a symbol of what American submarines can achieve when they fight without restraint. Photographs of it appear in newspapers across the country. For O'Kane, the patrol is a masterclass in combat command. He has learned how to read a convoy at night, how to position a submarine inside the escort screen, how to fire by instinct when the data computer is too slow. He has learned that caution kills and audacity saves lives. Morton recommends him for his own command. In October 1943, the orders arrive. Richard O'Kane is detached from Wahoo and ordered to Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California to supervise the construction of a new fleet submarine. He will be her captain. The boat is not yet named, but her hull number is SS-306. O'Kane says goodbye to Morton and the Wahoo crew. He does not know that he will never see any of them again. Wahoo departs on her 6th patrol in September 1943. She is ordered to the Sea of Japan, a dangerous mined waterway that no American submarine has successfully penetrated. Morton takes her through the narrow La Perouse Strait. She sinks 4 ships in a single day, then the messages stop. Wahoo is posted as overdue and presumed lost with all hands. At Mare Island, O'Kane receives the news in silence. He stares at the blueprint spread across the drafting table, the outline of his new boat. Wahoo is gone, Dudley Morton is gone, but the lessons they forged together are not gone. O'Kane picks up a pencil and begins to work. The submarine that will be named USS Tang is taking shape in the yard behind him. He has a crew to train, a war to fight, and a score to settle. O'Kane had learned the cost of hesitation on Wahoo, and he was determined never to repeat that mistake. During the refit at Midway after Tang's first patrol, he ordered a steel plate welded to the periscope shears, the steel frames that braced the periscopes, creating a raised lookout platform he called the Crow's Nest. It gave a man a view miles beyond the normal horizon, but it also meant a longer drop to the hatch during a crash dive. Chief Boatswain's mate, William Leibold, studied the rig and said nothing, though he privately wondered how fast a man could get down from that perch. O'Kane ran the crew through dive drills until the motion became muscle memory, and the Crow's Nest became a watch station for the agile and the brave. On January 22, 1944, Tang slipped out of Pearl Harbor on her first war patrol, bound for the Carolines. O'Kane drove the boat hard, keeping the lookouts sharp and the radar sweeps short. In the waters off the Palau Islands, he spotted a freighter, the Jioten Maru, steaming alone. He maneuvered Tang into firing position and loosed a spread of torpedoes. One hit, the ship exploded and went down by the stern. It was O'Kane's first kill as a captain, and the crew cheered. But the elation did not last. Later in the patrol, a second torpedo struck the side of a freighter and simply failed to explode. The ship steamed on, untouched. O'Kane stared through the periscope at the receding smoke, his jaw tight. The dud torpedo gnawed at him. He had seen this before, early in the war when faulty fish had cost submarines their kills and their lives. Tang returned to Pearl with one confirmed sinking and a cargo of frustration. O'Kane and his torpedomen spent the refit stripping and inspecting every remaining war shot. They found nothing obviously wrong, but the memory of that silent hit stayed with the captain. He knew that in a close fight, a torpedo that failed to explode could be the difference between a clean sweep and a lost boat. He ordered his men to test the depth mechanisms again and again until they were certain. On her second patrol, Tang was assigned a different kind of mission. The carriers of Task Force 58 were striking the Japanese bastion at Truk, and someone had to stand by to pick up the flyers who did not make it back. O'Kane received the order and took Tang straight toward the reef, well inside the range of the enemy shore batteries. The first day, he pulled 3 aviators from a rubber raft under the muzzles of Japanese guns. The second day, he worked in tandem with a Kingfisher float plane from the battleship North Carolina, towing rafts clear of the atoll while Tang gunners shelled the beach. The airmen came aboard wet and exhausted, and O'Kane's steward poured them coffee. Over 3 days, Tang made 7 separate pickups, rescuing 22 downed Navy airmen in total. Radio man Floyd Caverly manned the radar and the sonar, tracking both enemy patrols and American aircraft overhead. O'Kane broke radio silence to coordinate with the carrier pilots, a gamble that paid off when Admiral Mitcher personally authorized night fighters to help locate the last raft. When the final rescue was complete, the submarine was packed with aviators sleeping in every bunk and every corner of the crew's mess. No American submarine had ever pulled off a rescue of this scale. Tang had made history. Tang headed for Pearl Harbor with the aviators still aboard. O'Kane kept the radio quiet, not wanting to alert Japanese direction finders to his position. The delay built suspense back at the submarine base where no one knew whether the boat had survived the mission. When Tang pulled into the pier on May 1, 1944, the dock was crowded with brass and photographers. Fleet Admiral Nimitz and Admiral Lockwood stood waiting. The rescued airmen filed off the boat, and the press snapped pictures of O'Kane surrounded by the 22 men he had pulled from the sea. The story ran on the front page of the Honolulu Advertiser and in Life magazine. Tang was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for the patrol, and O'Kane received the Legion of Merit. Chief Boatswain's mate William Leibold, who had led the deck gang during the rescues, saw his captain's reputation settle into something permanent. O'Kane's tactics for lifeguarding were written up and distributed to every submarine in the fleet. The crow's nest, the close inshore work, the willingness to risk the boat for downed airmen, all of it became doctrine. Tang was no longer just a new boat, she was the boat to beat. At Midway Atoll in early June of 1944, the officers and men of Tang rested after their celebrated rescue mission. But for Richard O'Kane, the quiet days carried a heavy weight. Executive Officer Murray Frazee picked up the unofficial report that his former submarine, Grayback, on which he had made 7 patrols, was overdue and presumed lost. O'Kane shared Frazee's sorrow. Grayback's skipper, Commander Johnny Moore, had been a prospective commanding officer on Wahoo's 5th patrol serving under Mush Morton. The losses were mounting, but O'Kane could not afford to dwell on them. He had a boat to ready and a crew to lead. Over evenings in the Gooneeville corner room, he discussed tactics with other skippers, always probing, always refining. Tang's crew finished their rest ahead of schedule. They wanted back to sea, and O'Kane obliged. The boat slipped through the coral heads and headed west, bound for the Yellow Sea. The Crow's Nest lookout stood high above the bridge, scanning a horizon that belonged to Tang. Depth charges and sonar pings awaited, but so did a rich stretch of Japanese coastal shipping. On the night of June 26th, radar picked up multiple pips at 20,000 yards. O'Kane climbed to the bridge and studied the formation through his binoculars. 6 large ships steamed in 2 columns, ringed by a dozen escorts. He spoke quietly to the lookouts. Tang began her approach, slipping between the seaward escorts under cover of darkness. Inside the screen, O'Kane steadied the boat. He had 6 torpedoes forward. The leading freighter and a tanker presented perfect targets. He fired 3 fish at the first ship, then shifted aim and fired 3 more at the tanker. All 6 ran hot, straight, and normal. The explosions came in rapid succession, each hit visible as orange fire against the dark sea. Both targets sank within minutes. Shrapnel pattered on the water. Escorts raced in confusion, dropping depth charges far from Tang's position. O'Kane ordered flank speed and cleared the area. Below, the torpedo gang began reloading in silence. 4 ships were gone. The tanker Nasuzan Maru and the freighters Tamahoko Maru, Tainan Maru, and Kenichi Maru. It was the single most effective torpedo attack of the entire war. 4 days later, on Independence Day, lookouts spotted smoke near the Korean coast. O'Kane tracked the target, a large cargo ship. But the sea was shallow, dotted with fishing sampans. He made his approach carefully, aware that one mistaken periscope sweep could send a sampan's crew to the bottom. Tang submerged and moved inshore. The water shoaled to 2 fathoms, then 1. The boat settled onto the mud bottom, stuck fast. O'Kane did not hesitate. He ordered all back full and the outer doors opened. As the screws churned mud astern, he fired 3 torpedoes. The cargo ship Asuka-san Maru took 2 hits and sank on an even keel. Tang backed free and headed for deep water. That evening, radar picked up a second target, Yamaoka Maru, 7,000 tons, steaming in a protected channel. O'Kane fired 2 torpedoes from the forward tubes. Both struck. The freighter broke apart and vanished. Steward's mate Walker brought coffee to the bridge, and the crew observed the 4th with their own fireworks. 2 ships down in 1 day, one of them while aground. On July 6th, Tang's radar detected a contact moving away from Chopeki Point, the western tip of Korea. The target hugged the coast, forcing all coastal traffic to swing wide around the promontory. O'Kane studied the chart. This was exactly the kind of bottleneck he sought. He ordered a long surface end-around, running hard to get ahead of the freighter. By 0227, Tang was in position. O'Kane had only 2 torpedoes left, both in the stern tubes. He submerged, steadied the boat, and waited. The freighter Dory Maru appeared in the periscope lens, stack and mainmast aligned. He fired both fish. The first torpedo blew out the ship's side. The second hit seconds later. The vessel capsized and went under. The patrol was complete. O'Kane ordered a course for home, but not before making a wide, deliberate sweep to confuse any Japanese hunter-killer groups. The crew knew the numbers. 10 ships. No other American submarine had ever sunk 10 ships on a single patrol. The mess room buzzed with quiet pride as the boat ran east. Tang arrived at Midway to a band playing on the dock. Officers and men crowded the pier. Admiral Lockwood's staff was on hand. O'Kane stood on the bridge, his uniform salt-stained, his expression composed, the boat tied up, and the crew stepped ashore to handshakes and cold beer. The official count was 10 ships, the highest single patrol total in the history of the United States submarine force. O'Kane received a Navy Cross. The entire crew was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation. The patrol report, with its careful diagrams and terse after-action notes, became required reading for every new submarine commander. The record stood. O'Kane's name was now spoken alongside Morton's in wardrooms and officers' clubs. But he did not dwell on honors. Tang had earned her reputation the hard way, mile by mile, ton by ton. The crow's nest stood empty as the crew dispersed for rest, but the metronome stayed mounted in the sound shack. Another patrol would come soon enough. In early August 1944, Tang departed Midway for her fourth war patrol. The target zone was the coast of Honshu, where Japanese shipping hugged the shoreline. O'Kane moved the boat into water so shallow that the keel almost scraped the bottom. He believed surprise was worth the risk. The first contact came on August 10th. A tanker appeared, steaming inshore with air cover overhead. O'Kane fired 3 torpedoes from the bow tubes, all missed or ran deep. The tanker escaped. That night, O'Kane gathered his officers in the wardroom. They dissected every bearing and setting. The torpedo depth engines were flawed. Days later, radar picked up a coastal convoy. O'Kane took Tang into a protected channel. A Japanese gunboat opened fire, but O'Kane held his course. He fired 3 more torpedoes. 2 hit an 8,000-ton naval transport. The ship sank within minutes. The gunboat dropped depth charges, but Tang slipped into deep water after a tense hour. On September 3rd, Tang tied up at Pearl Harbor. The crew was exhausted, but the patrol had been successful. Admiral Lockwood pinned a 3rd stripe on O'Kane's collar. He was now a full commander. Executive Officer Murray Frazee was detached for rest and promotion. His replacement, Lieutenant Frank Springer, moved up from 3rd officer. Tang's 5th patrol began with a pre-departure inspection. O'Kane was checking the deck fittings as the boat prepared for heavy weather when he lost his footing and fell through an open deck plate into the lower engine room, dropping 5 feet and breaking his fall on the bottom rung of the ladder. The impact fractured his left foot. The pain was immediate and sharp. Days later, a typhoon struck, green water burying the bridge and rolling the boat past 60 degrees, but the fracture had already been set by the pharmacist's mate. Chief Pharmacist's mate Paul Larson examined the foot. He found broken bones and a severe sprain. O'Kane refused to turn back. Larson wrapped the foot and gave him a shot for pain. O'Kane spent the next week on his bunk, one ear on the intercom. The crew saw that their captain would not quit, even when his own body failed him. By October 23rd, Tang was in the Formosa Strait. Radar showed a large convoy, 10 ships in column, 5 escorts. O'Kane hobbled to the bridge. His boot was laced tight against the broken bones. The attack party took their stations. Tang slid inside the escort screen at 21 knots. O'Kane fired 6 torpedoes in under 2 minutes. Explosions lit the night sky. A freighter broke in half. A tanker erupted in flame. Escorts fired wildly at shadows. O'Kane ordered right full rudder, and Tang weaved through the burning wreckage. 4 ships went down. The sea was littered with debris and survivors. Tang reloaded her tubes. The crew was exhausted but exhilarated. O'Kane stood on the bridge, his foot throbbing. He turned the boat toward the last damaged transport. It was still afloat, low in the water. He ordered a single torpedo from the forward tubes. The range was 900 yards, a perfect setup. The first torpedo hit. O'Kane ordered the second fired. It broached the surface, turned sharply left, and began a circular run. The wake glowed in the dark. O'Kane shouted, "All ahead emergency, right full rudder." But the torpedo was 20 yards off the port beam, closing. Among the crew on Tang's final patrol were several men who would later be tested to their limits. Lieutenant Lawrence Savadkin, the engineer, motor machinist mate Clayton Decker at the bow planes, and seasoned torpedoman Hayes Truque and Jesse De Silva. The explosion ripped into Tang's stern. The boat went down in 20 seconds, stern first, bow rising. The bridge crew was thrown into the sea. Inside the control room, motor machinist's mate Clayton Decker reached up and pulled the vent lever for the forward ballast tanks. The boat settled level on the bottom at 180 feet. Through the night, small groups escaped using Momsen lungs. Lieutenant Lawrence Savadkin made a free ascent, the first American to do so from a sunken submarine. Motor machinist's mate Hayes Truckee surfaced with a life ring. Motor machinist's mate Jesse Da Silva followed. At dawn, a Japanese patrol boat picked up 9 men. As chief boatswain's mate William Leibold helped O'Kane into the whaleboat. He said, "Good morning, Captain. Do you want a ride?" O'Kane, his foot crushed and his boat gone, said nothing. He had survived. His crew would surrender to whatever came next. The Japanese took the 9 survivors of Tang to the Ofuna Interrogation Center, a secret naval prison not registered with the International Red Cross. O'Kane's broken foot went untreated, and the interrogators began their work with clubs and starvation rations. He placed himself between the guards and his men whenever possible, absorbing beatings that were meant to break their spirits. The diet of thin barley soup left him with beriberi and jaundice, his weight dropping below 100 pounds. He recited Latin poetry and passages from Robert Frost to keep his mind sharp, refusing to give the enemy anything beyond his name, rank, and serial number. In August of 1945, the war ended. B-29 bombers appeared over the camp, dropping crates of food and clothing instead of incendiaries. O'Kane was carried out on a stretcher, his body ravaged by disease, his eyes yellow with jaundice. He weighed less than 90 pounds. Admiral Lockwood met him in Guam and later wrote that O'Kane was the worst case he had seen among the returned submarine prisoners, and that a few more weeks in captivity would have killed him. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman presented O'Kane with the Medal of Honor on the South Lawn of the White House. The citation described Tang's final patrol and the furious night attacks in the Formosa Strait, the sinking of 8 enemy ships, and the leadership that held the crew together even in disaster. O'Kane accepted the medal on behalf of the 87 men of Tang, most of whom were still on patrol at the bottom of the sea. He later said that every submariner would have gladly settled for half his sinkings if that could have ended the war sooner. O'Kane retired from the Navy as a Rear Admiral in 1957 and settled on a horse ranch in Sonoma County, California. He wrote 2 books about his wartime service, preserving the record of his submarines and the men he commanded. He died in 1994 at the age of 83 and was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, surrounded by the shipmates he had led through the deepest waters of the war. His 27 confirmed sinkings made him the most successful submarine commander in American history, but those who knew him best said he never stopped thinking about the men he left behind. Executive Officer Murray Frazee went on to command the submarine Gar and retired as a captain. Radioman Floyd Caverly, who survived Tang's sinking and was held as a prisoner of war, returned home after liberation. And the legacy of Dudley Morton, lost with Wahoo, lived on in the tactics O'Kane perfected. If you have family stories from the Pacific War or memories of the submarine service, please share them in the comments below. We read every one. And if you would like to see more documentaries like this one, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Thank you for listening and for keeping the memory of these brave men alive.